Welcome to the AWAKN podcast. These are conversations between a dude and his mom. And your fee for entry is to be kind to someone else today. My name is Gem, and I am an award-winning author and founder of Another Way, a personal development company.
My name is Slate. I am Jem's son, one and only, and I'm an entrepreneur and a life insurance salesman.
Nice. Today, we are talking about perspective.
Yeah, boy, did we have some growing up, that's for sure.
Yeah, in 2008, we went from living in a 6,500 square foot house with 5-car garage and a coach house and an elevator in it, to living in 3 tents in the national forest with a family of 5 and our dog after the global financial crisis caused us to lose everything.
Yeah, not a great time to grow up. Definitely challenging for sure.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is, so I was having a conversation with Jade, my older sister. We're all named after stones, if you couldn't tell. And I was talking to her the other day about how when we were growing up, we were always like, you have to be happy no matter where you're at. You should be grateful for what you have, and there's always something, like there's always an optimistic outlook that you can have, even though what you're going through is tough. And I was talking to Jade the other day, and she was saying how she thinks that with that perspective and with the outlook of everything always has to be okay and everything always has to be optimistic, that she felt like we didn't really get to have we didn't get to engage with the hardness of what we went through. And living in the woods, we didn't really get to engage with, wow, this really does suck. Instead, it was, how can we make this not suck? Which both sides are very valid.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, like from the kid standpoint, you're living in the woods in a tent, going to school. That sucks. But also, we had a lot of fun in the woods, and we had experiences in the woods that I don't know anybody that has had the experiences that we had. And so there is this like duality of, you know, it being a great experience while also, you know, like where do you, I think my question is, like, growing up, did you feel the same way where like did you feel like we could be sad or mad about living in the woods, or did you feel like it was be positive? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And you're talking about from my perspective as the mom in the situation. Yeah. Well, it was, it kind of caught us all by surprise. So it was something that was a difficult situation. And as much as I wanted to be there for you, to allow you to have your feelings and your emotions and everything, it was a crisis for Dad and I. So there was some expectation, probably on our part, for you guys to, could you guys all just get along, and could everybody just have a good attitude while we navigate this really screwed up situation? I think
So it was almost more of like, we need you to have a good attitude so we don't fall apart.
I mean, maybe yes and no. More so that if we could all have good attitudes, maybe we'll get out of our situation faster, and we will, get to the other side. Now, as I say that now, this is, over a decade later. This is, gosh, what is that? It's
2008 is 10.
14 years later.
So 14 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, we were in the woods in 2008, summer of 2008. So yeah, it's about 14 years later. 14 years later, I have some different perspective on the whole thing. I think that, you know, when you're thrown into a crisis situation like that, here we were living a pretty amazing life in Illinois, and we had all sorts of toys, you know, that you guys played with, you know, dirt bikes and just fun
Airsoft
stuff.
guns.
Yeah, we were always doing stuff, and lived right by the river, and we had a lot of family near us. So what we went from that and building our dream home, you know, this was like a house that we thought we were gonna um, leave to you guys as a legacy later on, that we were going to have
Mm.
this really awesome house that all your friends are going to want to come to this house, and this will be the house where all the kids, you know, when they're teenagers, are going to come and hang. Um and then it just went down the tubes. You know, we had rental property and different stuff, and uh our business, and we were too thin. We didn't have enough capital to keep going to weather the storm when everything stopped going in the economy and the bubble burst.
Hmm.
And it was just a surprise that, you know, we had to let go of everything. And when we went out there to let go, well, we didn't go out there to, we went out there and we decided that we were going to go live in the woods in tents because we could do it for free in the national forest. All you had to do was
Hmm.
just like move every 14 days so that you weren't in the same spot, and then you could go and stay for free. Um, and we left with like $2,200. So we needed to like get out of our situation pretty fast. So
And
that
we
when,
left in a rental car, didn't we?
yeah, yeah, because all the cars got repossessed and the
Yeah.
house was foreclosed on. We finished, we signed all of our bankruptcy papers, and we left Illinois and drove to Arizona and stayed in the national forest just outside Flagstaff. So when we were out there, it was kind of like, I was freaking out because one, I was carrying a lot of shame for what had happened. I didn't realize that so much of the country had been dealing with this, you know, crash. And I thought that it was just us. So I took a really hard I took it personal that I had failed.
Mm.
And I think for, you know, as a mom, I wanted you guys to have as normal of childhood as possible, you know, given that we were going to go do something really, really different than mainstream. And we probably could have had you guys, you know, one of you guys live with one of your aunts or uncles, or, you know, something like that, or a
Yeah.
grandparent, and
Thank God we didn't do
split
that.
us up, but we didn't want to do anything like that. So,
No, and when you look back on it now, I mean, through the whole experience, Jade, Amethyst, and I are way closer than probably any other set of siblings I've ever met.
yeah,
And I'm way closer to you and dad than most people are to their parents. And let's be honest, those relationships would not look the way that they did today if I would have grown up in a 6,000 square foot house with an elevator.
I don't think so, because
No.
each
And
had,
I wouldn't be the person I am today either.
right. No, not at all. Looking back in hindsight, it was really a gift. And it sounds
Hmm.
really corny. Um,
Here we are
to
looking at the
say it's like,
positives
oh, it was
again.
such a gift. But it really was. I mean, like you said, we're so much closer. I think our family, just because we had to navigate something really difficult together.
Hmm.
It forced us to stay close, and some of the fallout of that is probably expectations that we get put on you guys to kind of grow up a little bit faster
Hmm.
because we needed you to at the time. And not that it
Interesting.
stayed that way, but um you know, I think even in our life before we lost everything, I mean, you were kind of expected to have a good attitude. You know, that was just kind of one of our things in our house.
That was definitely always one of the things.
Yeah, have a good attitude. But I also think, you know, prior to losing everything, I had started a pretty intense personal development journey of my own. And I knew at that point how important it was to express your feelings and to be able to have emotion and be able to name it and stuff like that. So I had already been working with you guys on that,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm probably, you know, I'm certain that there was probably times maybe where you wanted to express it and there wasn't room for you to express it at the time.
Oh, I could definitely see that. And I mean, like seeing it from the perspective of somebody who's 26 years old now, I mean, imagine you guys have 3 kids. They're all under 15 years old. And you're like, we're about to go live in tents. And it's going to be a good time, but it's going to be hard. I mean, that would feel soul crushing. I mean,
Oh, it was.
like there's families out there that are like embarrassed to tell their kids or anything when like they can't go to camp or they can't go, on a school field trip. And I mean, just the sheer like mental toughness it would take to look your kids in the eye and be like, it's hard to say, but this is what the plan is. That would be,
That was
that had to have been a terrifying experience.
Oh, it was awful. It was awful. You talk about soul crushing, having to, because we didn't have much money. We had chewed through all the equity in our house and borrowed against it, thinking that we were going to be able to weather this storm that we thought, oh, this can't last too long. It's like 2006 goes, 2007 goes. It's like 2008. We're like,
there's no more
holding
equity
on by their fingertips. It's finally like, fuck, let go. And so we decided to get one of those pods, storage things.
I remember packing that motherfucker up.
Yeah. And we were kind of like, all right, we're going to have to, take what we can. We're going to have to prioritize what we take. And, telling you guys to go through your stuff in your rooms and pick out what you want to keep and then have like a pile of what you want to take with you in the car,
Mm-hmm.
for that you're only going to have just a few little things in the car and some clothes for the summer. And then everything else is like, you're going to have to chisel down what you really care about most. And each person gets to keep some stuff in the pod. And then, everything else kind of got left behind. And then people ended up going through our house afterwards and taking stuff.
Yeah.
We weren't there for it, but I heard it was kind of weird. But yeah,
Really?
that was soul crushing. No, that because then you guys are like little kids. I mean, you were in what, sixth
It would have
grade?
been 7th, I think.
Yes, probably just got out of 6th, going into 7th grade.
Mm-hmm.
Amethyst was, I think 8 or
Third,
9.
probably third grade,
Third
right?
grade, yep, going into 3rd grade, I think. And
Yeah.
Jade had just graduated from 8th grade and was going into high school.
Yeah. Fresh into high school.
Shit. I mean,
sorry, I live in the woods. You can't come over to my house because I don't live in a house.
Oh my gosh. I mean, high school is hard enough to go into when you know the people that you're going into high school with, and compare it to like, you don't know where you are and you're in a freaking tent.
Like, yeah. And in a new place, no friends, you live in the woods and you're brand new. What's really remarkable throughout the whole situation is I don't know if it speaks to the level of confidence you and dad had in the kids, or if it speaks to the maybe it was the optimism, but all 3 of your kids are wonderfully cool people. I mean, it's unbelievable. There's so many people that, like, looking at it now through the lens that I have, if I knew, like, let's say I have 20 friends, right? I don't know that there's many people out there that could have gone through that experience, 1, at all and been okay with it, but 2, have gone through that experience and came out to be like ultra cool people. I mean, it's really interesting, and it's really hard to pinpoint like the reason for it. But I mean, pretty cool. Like we
Oh
all
yeah.
lucked out.
Oh yeah. And I think it's I mean, there's definitely some luck in there, but we had a lot of faith. Uh I did a lot of praying before
Mm,
I left Illinois because I mean, you picture it, right? Dad is all of a sudden like, all right, I got it. We're going to go and we're going to camp. And I'm like, okay, great. KOA, it'll be awesome. And he's like, no, it's going to be primitive tents. We're going to go to Walmart. We're going to buy some tents. We're going to buy a couple coolers. We're going to have a few things and we're going to stay for free. And I was
for
like, what
free.
are you talking about? And that just shook me. I was like, there's no way. I mean, I didn't want to believe that we were going to have to do that because it just felt so, um,
Aggressive.
well, and abnormal. I mean, I dealt with shame, feeling stupid and, feeling like, if people didn't approve of me, then, there was something screwed up about me and I really
Hmm.
needed, that was part of my personal development journey.
For sure.
But I was dealing with all of that. And then I thought, but at the time I had um, just a really, really strong faith that if this is really what God wanted for us, like if he brought us to it, he'd get us through it. That was kind of my
Mm,
mantra. Um, and I mean, I can't even, I have so many journal entries that were like, WTF, man, what are you doing to us? I don't know what you're doing, but I'm freaking out and none of this makes sense. And I want some answers. And, it was terrible.
I believe
Um,
it. Well,
and
and I mean, that's just the 8 months that we spent in the woods. That's not even like the slew of houses we moved into afterwards.
mm,
That's not moving across the country a few times. That's not living in hotel rooms
oh
and
my gosh, yeah.
living on the road for like a number of years. I mean, I
Yeah.
was driving past when you're on 35 and you're over by that motorcycle dealership in Austin, and there's the old hotel we used to
Yeah.
stay at. I was
Yeah.
driving past it the other day with my friends, and I was like, oh my God, I used to
Dude, we lived there.
sleep on that floor for like months. It's like, I
Yeah.
totally forgot about that. Yeah, it's really
Well,
interesting.
yeah, for the people who are listening and don't know the story, we had left Illinois. We lived in the woods for a couple months that summer, and then we finally got into a rental house. I found a job and I got a little money together. My boss helped me, and we got into a house. And then there was mold in the house. Remember that one?
Oh, that was
And then we
bad.
moved back into the woods because there was mold in the house and everyone started getting sick. I was the only one who wasn't because I was the only one going out of the house every day.
Like
Um,
ill.
yeah, to go to work. And then we got into a different rental house finally, lived there almost a year, moved
Hmm.
to that one on Pyrite,
That was
lived
the first
there
cool
for a
house we
year.
lived in after
Yeah,
611 East Main, which
it
was
was
the
a
big
really cool
house.
house. And then do you remember the knock on the door there?
Oh yeah, the dude that owned the house wasn't paying the mortgage or something like that.
Oh, we were paying the rent and he wasn't paying the mortgage and his house got foreclosed on and we got kicked
Yeah,
out
again,
again.
crazy.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. And
How
then we
many
moved to another one.
how many houses did we live in, like, from the time we left, or just in total? Like, so we had Park Ridge, we had Gillick, we had the main house, the big house in Illinois. And then how many houses total do you think we lived in?
We lived in two others in Cary. And then we lived
Because Jade always told me that we had lived in like 30 houses.
like it's 25 or more. Yeah, it
Oh,
is.
so it is
Oh, it's
a
a lot.
lot.
Yeah, we
It's a
moved
lot of
around a
moving.
lot when you guys were
Yeah,
little. From the time, I mean, if you talk about from the time Jade was born, I can count probably 25 moves that we made, getting,
damn.
trying and basically, following the money. So wherever we could make
Oh,
money to keep going, it really wasn't about what did we want to do as like our passion. It was like, well, how can we make money? And that's what we followed until
Until like you
20.
built the house that you're in. I mean,
Well,
even still, if you
yes.
run the look that long,
Yeah,
it was
true.
that's
Yeah.
the reason you're there.
Yeah, it got, yeah. Yeah, it's only till recently. Yeah, because when we went in 2014, we went to Texas. That's when the hotel that you
Yep.
were talking about, we stayed in when we first
Yeah.
got
When we were roofers for the first time.
yeah, roofers and storm chasers. That was actually started back in Arizona in 2010.
Oh
You
yeah.
were too young to be a part of it.
I was, but I do remember loving Arizona. Living in Flagstaff was amazing. And I even liked living in where did we live? Surprise.
Nope, we lived in North Phoenix.
Oh, North Phoenix. And
Yeah,
then we spent that little, didn't we
oh,
live in Anthem
Black
for a little
Canyon
while?
City, Black Canyon
Yeah.
City, where all the
Yes.
Saguaro cactus were.
Yes. Where that Hell's Angels dude lived too.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Yeah. Man, a lot
Yeah,
of
so there was just a
experiences.
lot of moving around, as we tried to dig our way, I guess, walk our way out of the hole that we had dug for ourselves. So it
Yeah.
was just kind of one thing after another, trying to navigate how do we, I think in our mind, it was kind of like, how do we get back to where we were? But
Mm,
really, it wasn't until we switched our vision to what do we really want that we actually started getting out of the situation that we were in.
that's a neat learning lesson.
Yeah, that
That's a
was,
really neat learning lesson.
there's
Okay,
lots
I have a
of
question.
great lessons. Yeah.
Through like the childhood of like from the mother's perspective, what was like the most fascinating thing for you like to watch in regards to your children?
Lots of things, but I mean, in in regard to like when we lost everything.
Yeah, like living in the woods, moving
Yeah,
around, like the hardship. What was the most fascinating thing to watch your children do?
that you could lead them to a perspective. So
Like
dad
you
was,
could?
well, dad, I would say dad probably was the leader in that respect. He really painted the picture like it was going to be an adventure. Oh my gosh, we're
Mm,
going to go live on a mountain and we're going to be able to go hiking and we're going to camp and we're going to make s'mores. And I mean, he set the stage that it was going to be this fantastic adventure. And I was just like,
he's right.
yeah. And I shut my mouth and was like, all right, I'm just going to go along with this. And then you guys loved it. I mean, you loved it.
Interesting.
I think that was so cool for me to see that even though my perspective during that situation was, you know, messed up and I was having a really hard time, I could see that your perspective, you were having pine cone wars with your sister
Yeah.
out in the
Yeah.
woods, and you were making beautiful pieces of art with rocks, stacking them up, and then you made this
Hmm.
really cool like hut out of all these branches, and they were all stacked, and you made this like little cool hut that you could go into. And
That one was fun. That
um
was scary to sleep in. I only slept in it the one night.
yeah,
Not a fan.
not a fan.
Stick with the tent.
Yeah, but it was so cool to see that if you sort of give the kids the perspective that you want them to have, they will run with it and
Interesting.
they will adopt it. But you've got to kind of
Set the stage.
sell it.
Oh, and let's be honest, Dad's a good salesman
Dad's a
for
great
sure.
salesman. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is funny.
Yeah. And it helped me too, because seeing you guys enjoy yourselves and feel joy when I knew how much money I had in my purse and how much money was in the bank account, which was almost nothing. And, we had like a cooler with food in it, but I was just like, holy cow. And these guys are just playing and having fun. And we had everything that we needed. I mean, that was really the cool part about it, was, which gave me, I think today, now I have this perspective, like, what's the worst that can happen? You wind up in the woods. I mean, I can deal with it now. So I'm not so afraid to try things, because I know, it's not that big of a deal if it
Mm-mm.
doesn't work or you lose something. I'm not attached to stuff like I used to be.
Yeah. Well, and specifically, our family is not all that attached to like things.
Yeah.
Like all the kids, you and dad, I mean, everybody's really more focused on like people and growth and
Action.
like, yeah, and things that are much more like nourishing to the human soul than
Yeah.
just consuming and buying things, which
Yeah.
is pretty neat to see.
Yeah. Jade was, she's reading that book, The Untethered Soul.
Oh
And
yeah, she sent me a picture of it.
yeah, I've been listening to it on Audible and
How is it?
it's great. And it was talking about your comfort zone. And I started thinking about like when we lost everything, I mean,
Hmm.
talk about like getting out of your comfort zone. That was exactly a perfect, explanation of getting out of your comfort zone. And really what you need to do when that happens, sometimes we try to get back to where our comfort zone was. Like we want to get back to, I want it to just be like it was.
Hmm.
And what's interesting is you just really want to create a new comfort zone.
Oh, that's
It
interesting.
doesn't necessarily have to be the way it was, because the way it was really, when you look back on it, it I
Really
mean,
wasn't that
yeah, it
great.
was nice, but I mean, it really wasn't working so great. So
No, and I mean, I was even talking to Jade the other day about that because like at first when we moved to the woods, the goal was to like get back into a house, right?
yeah, that was the first thing.
And I was telling her, she asked me if you had one word to describe your childhood, what would your one word be? And I said lonely. And it definitely all started in the big house because that do you remember that house was lonely? I mean, you could walk around that house and not see anybody. And like the amount of times there was like, I mean, you could hear people in the house, but like we didn't talk, we didn't like communicate, there was no like family dinner, there was no hangout sessions. And then you move to the woods, now you're hanging around a fire, you're playing games in the woods, you're building things, you're hanging out and playing. And it was
Yeah,
like it was completely different. And I think that's part of the reason why I specifically cherished my time in the woods, even though it was hard and it was difficult. But I went from being really lonely and having a really hard time to, are you kidding me? I get to go play every day. I get to go build things. I get to sit around campfires with my family. I mean, the amount of nights we spent around a campfire chatting
yeah,
is a 10. I mean,
yeah,
that is so cool. And it would have never happened. That specifically is why we're close as a family for sure, because we were
yeah.
forced to be close.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's true. We were sort of put in a situation that forced us to be with each other.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that, yeah, I mean, yeah, it did. It forced us to be together and gave us the opportunity to be vulnerable together. Because
Mm, that's a great way to put it.
we really, by that time, Dad and I had, been to counseling because Dad and I actually got divorced in 2004 and we lost everything. We were back together, but we hadn't gotten married again until like 2011. But we were back together in 2005. So it was only like a year later.
Hmm.
And we lived as a family, just like we were married again. But we had gone to counseling for like 2 years. So it was really funny. Like from my perspective, I kept thinking, oh my God, we got it all worked out now. It's like we went to counseling and things are better. And look at us now. And now we get this big house. And then it was like, oh, not, you're going to get it all taken away. And yeah, that was just such a freaky, because I really had so much faith in God that he like had my back. And I still believe that he does. But it looked so different than I thought it was going to, because you make plans in life and sometimes they don't always work out. And at that point we had been really focused on doing gratefuls.
Mm,
So that was
yes,
something
we
we
always did
all
those.
did, whenever we were together, and we were always, outside of me working, we were always together, whether it was we were in the car or we were at the campsite, or unless Dad and I had left to go try and find a house or something like that. I mean, we were pretty much always together, and we would focus on gratefuls, and we would say, all right, now everybody's got to do 5 gratefuls, and then
Hmm.
we'd go around the whole group. What are you guys grateful for? And
Yeah, it is
remember that?
interesting. I do
Sometimes
def
it's
I
like
definitely remember that.
sometimes there's like dumb stuff. It's like, I don't know, sunshine. It's like sunny every single day.
Seriously, Arizona was definitely sunny. Well, and I'm trying to think of like there was definitely a lot of time spent like being grateful for what you do have instead of like being miserable for what you don't have. And that I think in and of itself is a great learning lesson for any kid, no
Yeah.
matter what you do have, right? Now, we
Yeah.
just happen to not have a lot. Um, and it's really interesting because I think that's the reason why I've morphed it kind of into that delusional optimism that I tend to like spew out. And there's definitely people that are like, can we not be so optimistic right now? And I'm like, but everything's going to work out for your highest and best good. It's just a fact. And a lot of the times you're like, dude, this sucks, right? I mean, I have things in my life today that I'm like, why am I still dealing with this? And why am I in it? And I think the thing that I try and repeat to myself a lot is this, what you're going through right now is building the skill set that you're going to need to do something bigger in the future.
Yeah.
And when you look at it from that perspective, it's like, all right, fine. Like, I guess I'll go through it with a good attitude because I have to go through it anyway if I want to grow as a person.
True.
And why not go through it with a great attitude? Because odds are, if you go through it with a bad attitude, it'll just take longer. And on top of that, when you realize that, God, source, energy, whatever you want to call it, is has your back 100%
Yeah.
without you doing anything, it's like, all right, I will get to where I need to go, but the road is so much more fraught with anger and tears and joy and shame than you would think. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Because
Oh, oh yeah.
and everybody online nowadays, it's like they post these Instagrams where it's like, my life is amazing. And then you meet those people in person, you're like, you're a sad bitch. Like you hate your life. Or, it's just one thing after the next of them posting things. And you're just like, you're not even a happy person. I swear, the more money people have, they get trapped by it. And they're like, I mean, the amount of people that you see that have tons of money that are just not happy people is so sad. It's so sad.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be, you can have stuff happen, and throw you kind of off course a little bit
Hmm.
while, you're going along in life. But kind of like what you were saying before, if you acknowledge it and you let yourself sit in the discomfort of it and
Hmm.
feel the pain, actually at that point, by acknowledging it and saying, yeah, this sucks, or feeling the I guess negative feelings about, it's really just emotion. It doesn't even have to be negative or positive. It's just feeling the emotion of it and then letting it go. It can move through you and you don't have to hang on to it, you know?
Mm,
So,
that is interesting. I
yeah,
think I struggle with the letting it go part. That I find remarkably hard to do.
I think most people do. I think that's why people are so frustrated, and it creates suffering in life.
Oh yeah, it creates more suffering than probably anything else that I deal with is like and maybe you have some advice on this, but like, how like when you do things that you're either shameful of or you feel like you could have done better, or there was an interaction that you had where like, you wish it would have gone differently, even though you don't wish you would have changed what you said, but you wish it would have been received differently, right?
Yeah.
And then, afterwards you play it over in your head 500 billion times and you're like, but what if it went this way, or what if I said it that way? Like, what would you say, um what would Jem the author say if like somebody's going through that? How do you let it go?
Uh, well, I think part of it is, like forgiving yourself. Um,
Hmm.
and is that kind of what you're talking about with that?
Well, kind of, but I think like in the personal development game, everybody's like, forgive yourself, right? How do you do it? How do you forgive yourself when you're going through
Okay.
things and you're like, I don't forgive myself?
Well, it's kind of like if you look at unforgiveness. Unforgiveness is like you're brought out your arsenal of big guns. You're
Mm-hmm.
like and you're firing them at yourself over and
Mm-hmm.
over, kind of like out of punishment for whatever it is that you feel like you did wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And forgiveness is kind of like putting the arsenal away and saying, I'm not going to bring those big guns out anymore. I'm going to acknowledge it and say, yep, I did this thing, whatever, this behavior, and figure out what you can learn from it. you know what can I get out of it? What would I do different next time? How might I look at it, or how might I approach that situation, if it happened to come up again?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a choice of, next time the thought comes in your head, choosing to notice it and say, oh,
Mm-hmm.
there's that thought again, and then just letting it sort of dissipate, not feeling like you have to take it on the spiral down, to the basement.
Mm-hmm.
That feeling of,
I know it
you start
well.
spiraling down with it. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. And your wheels are spinning, and it's like choosing not to take those stairs down to the basement anymore.
Yeah. And it's really remarkable how good your mind is at punishing yourself.
Well, it's a habit. It's,
Yeah.
it's a you know, neuro highway in your head. You're creating these pathways. And if you take them, each time you take that pathway in your brain, you are strengthening it, and it actually thickens and gets bigger. So the information can go through faster next time. So you don't have to wait so long to get to that um, destination in your mind.
Interesting.
And your brain is built that way to keep you safe. But, there's a lot of things that it thinks it's keeping you safe, but really it's something you want to change. So
Mm-hmm.
you've got to slowly, or, methodically, not take those pathways anymore. You've got to choose different pathways to strengthen instead
So
of.
what I'm hearing you say is just merely the fact of uh like the act of self-forgiveness is the the act of self-forgiveness is you choosing to not berate yourself. And over time, instead of choosing to berate yourself, you will slowly shrink that neural pathway and it will become easier and easier. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And um, like I said, at first you're going to have to come to some sort of a concession with yourself. It's like, okay, I've learned something from it, or it's somehow some good has got to come out of it. So figure out what that good thing is, whether it's, I know that I'm not going to do that with anybody else anymore, or I'm not going to do that thing anymore, whatever it is. And I learned it. So now I can use that to help somebody else maybe in the future. If they ever have that problem, I know how to deal with it. And then,
Uh,
yeah, making that choice
that's pretty
to,
interesting.
yeah, if you can get yourself to work on the human needs that are underneath the stuff, that's
Mm-hmm.
that's the key. So I went through the training for strategic intervention coaching,
Mm-hmm.
and it's based on human needs. And when you go over and over in your head, it's like you're trying to get something, you're trying to feed something. So it could be connection just with yourself. And so you do it over and over again. And
Oh.
in order to change that, you've got to figure out something else that you can connect with and possibly have it be something more higher level, like either growth or contribution. Because if you concentrate on doing something that brings you to growth or contribution, you'll meet almost all of those other human needs.
And how many human needs are there?
There's 6 of them. So it's love and connection, certainty, which is safety, certainty, variety, growth and contribution. Those are the 2. What was the other one? Significance.
Well, and it's really interesting hearing you say that, because there's definitely like something to be said about like when you berate yourself, or like I had an interaction with my friends the other day where I just didn't like how it turned out. I had said a story about somebody and it like went sideways, and I was like, wait, this is not what I was looking for. This is not like what I was trying to highlight. And for like a week afterwards, I was just like, ugh, this was terrible. And what's really interesting is like playing it over and over in my head, like felt very significant, felt like I was trying to grow and, trying to do these different things. And what's really going to be interesting is in the future, when all of a sudden I see myself like going down the pathway or going down the stairs into the basement and trying to, instead of fill the needs that are making the spiral worse, is trying to attach them to things that make it better. It's very interesting. I'll have to try it.
Well, and that's, let's see if I have it sitting right here. All of what we're talking about is, be right back.
Man, that's a good deal.
All of what we're talking about, but these are all like the lessons that I had learned during the personal development stuff that I did, and then losing everything, all those lessons. And then I wrote this book, Be Unmessable.
I read half.
And
does that count for anything?
You did read it?
No, I read half.
Oh, you read half. Yeah. I don't think anyone in my family has read the whole thing, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
We lived it with you. We don't
You
need
lived
to read
it. Exactly. I could see where maybe it's a little different when you live with the person. But the point that I was trying to make is all of those lessons that you're talking about. I mean, those are all things that, it's the questions that you ask yourself in your head after, like when you're ruminating over something that you've done, and you get to that place where you're like, what was I thinking? Why would I do something like that? What a jerk, or I can't believe how stupid I was. It's like all those little things. That's all that stuff that's going on inside your head. And like, you can't do that. Like, you have to make a commitment to being your biggest cheerleader, because nobody else is going to. Nobody else is going to be that biggest person for you. You have to be that for you. And you have to have some sort of a vision. That's like the first step in that, live another way process that I came up with, is you have to know where you're going, because everything else is going to follow that. Because if you don't know where you're going, you're just going to wind up wherever. And I think that's why people wind up feeling so frustrated and stuck and, unhappy. And I mean, you don't have to. You could be in the middle of the woods and you can still be joy-filled and grateful and peaceful and having a great time with almost no money in the bank. So it's
for
really
sure
getting yourself through it.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about you saying that, and I will have to read your book because I think it would be helpful. But what's really interesting about you saying that is, like, the last 2 years for me have been really interesting because I hang around people that are very successful, right? I've got a buddy who's a professional poker player. I've got another buddy who's an unbelievable salesman. I've got two other friends that own a streetwear brand, and they throw these really cool, concerts, after parties. And I'm hanging around them and I'm like, broke, and I'm like, it's interesting because like you surround yourself with people that are successful, even though you're not. I am still very happy and very optimistic about life. And I don't know where I was going with that.
Well, I think what you said is just a perfect segue into how do you define success? Because you don't necessarily have to measure success in only financial, because as far as I'm concerned, you're an incredibly successful human just because you are, the way you communicate with people, the way you show up and add to an environment that you're in. I mean, there are so many people who are loaded, who suck a room dry because they add nothing to it. They don't have that energy or life to them. They're very focused on other things. And
that's a great point. I mean, going back to what we just said is like, I'm focused on the things that I don't have, when in actuality, I need to be focused on the things that I am great at and hyping myself up for those things.
Well, yeah, because what you focus on grows.
Yes, it does.
Again, that brings us back to being in the woods, why your parents were just like, please focus on good stuff right now because we need all the help that we can get.
Seriously.
Like we can't go into scarcity mode. And even though we've got nothing, financially, it's like we have a lot. We're very abundant. Yeah.
I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting Post-it notes over my house. Things that I am great at and very successful at. And then the things that I am not that successful at. Should I have Post-it notes for that too? Well, or should I be thankful for those in advance?
Well, I think you should be thankful for those in advance. Exactly. And just thank God or the universe or whoever you're thanking. Thank you that I have these things. They're coming in the mail, they are within my reach, and
they are divinely delivered.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can't even tell you how much we had to work that muscle when we were out in the woods. It was like we could sit there and just crawl under a rock and hide from the world. But we had 3 kids to take care of, and there was no fucking way I was going to let you guys go down.
Seriously. Yeah, go live with your aunt. No, don't make me. Yeah. That is funny. Any idea what time we're at?
I don't know. We're somewhere around an hour. We could wrap it up for today.
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's wrap it up. Well, folks, if you found any of this helpful, any of this information felt right to you, please like, subscribe, share, comment, and have a great rest of your day. And always be sure to have that delusional optimism. All right. AWAKN podcast. We're out.
Thanks for spending time with us.
See you guys.
See ya.
Love you, Mom.
Love you too.